Michael stood at the gate, the metallic chill of the terminal seeping through his tailored suit. He glanced back at Emily, her face a mixture of a familiar warmth and a barely concealed anxiety. Their two children, 8-year-old Lily and 5-year-old Tom, were clinging to her legs, their small faces upturned, mirroring Emily's own blend of love and concern. It was a tableau that should have filled him with unwavering affection and a sense of immediate return, but a subtle undercurrent of something else, a restless yearning, also tugged at him. He'd been a devoted husband and father. That was true. His career as a corporate executive at a rapidly expanding tech firm demanded frequent travel, but he had always meticulously compartmentalized his life, assuring Emily that no amount of ambition or business could ever trump their family's significance in his world. This trip, however, felt different. It wasn't just another cross-country jaunt. It was a high-stakes negotiation, a pivotal deal that could propel his career to a whole new level. He'd be gone for over a month, leaving Emily to shoulder the entirety of their domestic life. As the boarding call echoed through the terminal, a discordant symphony of excitement and guilt played within Michael. He loved them fiercely. He loved the cozy evenings spent reading to the children, Emily's warm presence next to him on the couch as they watched a movie, the familiar comfort of their suburban home. Yet, the relentless routine, the predictable cadence of work and home, sometimes felt like a gilded cage. He longed for something more, something to stir the embers of his spirit, even if he couldn't quite name what that something was. He kissed Emily, a lingering kiss meant to convey all the affection he felt, and also to mask the unspoken desires that had begun to brew beneath the surface of his placid life. He promised to call every night, to make time for video calls despite the grueling work schedule ahead. He tousled Tom's hair, winked at Lily, and then boarded the plane, the weight of his family's expectations settling squarely on his shoulders even as he felt an odd lightness creeping into his chest. The city lights of his destination were a glittering spectacle that night. The luxurious hotel, a stark contrast to the warmth of his suburban home, exuded an atmosphere of opulence and ambition. The lobby buzzed with a potent energy, businessmen in tailored suits engaged in hushed, intense conversations, ambitious professionals networking over expensive cocktails, and an almost palpable sense of opportunity, with a subtle, alluring current of temptation swirling just beneath the surface. He felt a sense of detachment from his former life, as if he had stepped into a movie set, a world that was both exciting and disturbingly foreign. He'd booked the executive suite, a room with panoramic views of the city. Yet, despite the opulence, the room felt sterile, impersonal. The silence was deafening compared to the joyful chaos of his home. That first evening, he called Emily and the children, recounting his journey, trying to make them laugh with exaggerated tales of plain food. He listened to their day, their triumphs and trivial complaints, a smile on his face, while a knot of unease tightened in his stomach. He missed the familiar cacophony of their lives, yet a part of him was also exhilarated by the sheer difference of this world he found himself in. For the first few days, Michael meticulously kept up his routine of calls and video chats with his family. He shared stories of his day, tried to make the children laugh, and listened intently to Emily as she recounted their small victories and challenges. But slowly, as the days turned into weeks, the pressures of work began to take their toll. The relentless schedule, the pressure to close the deal, and the loneliness of hotel room living began to chip away at his resolve. His colleagues, a group of driven, upwardly mobile men and women, spent their evenings networking at the hotel bar, unwinding after long days of negotiations. Michael initially resisted, preferring to retreat to his room, but the constant invitation, the implicit sense that he was missing out, eventually wore down his defenses. He started joining them for a drink, then two, and then three, feeling a strange sense of camaraderie as he shared his own work-related anxieties and aspirations. Jessica, a sharp, confident, and strikingly attractive business associate, was always among them. Her gaze was piercing, her wit was sharp, and her laughter had a seductive lilt. She listened attentively when Michael spoke, truly listened, in a way that made him feel noticed, appreciated, and younger. What began as casual conversations over dinner and drinks inevitably transitioned into longer, more personal encounters. He found himself drawn to her, her boldness a stark contrast to Emily's quiet nurturing. Jessica was a breath of fresh air, an escape from the familiar patterns of his life. One evening, after a particularly grueling day of negotiations, Michael found himself alone with Jessica in the hotel bar, the dim lights casting soft shadows on her face. The conversation flowed effortlessly, covering everything from their career ambitions to their childhood dreams. He found himself sharing more with her than he had with anyone in a long time, including his own wife. He confided in her about the stress of his job, his fear of failure, and a subtle dissatisfaction that had started to creep into his life. She listened intently, nodding and offering words of encouragement that made him feel understood and validated. As the hours passed, the lines between professionalism and personal connection blurred. The casual touches, the lingering glances, they were all becoming a part of their unspoken dance. When Jessica leaned in, lightly brushing her hand against his, something inside of Michael snapped. A voice in his head screamed at him to stop, to pull away, to remember his family, but another, quieter voice whispered that he deserved this attention, this escape, this moment of sheer, unadulterated feeling. He kissed her. It was a brief kiss, but it shattered the carefully constructed walls he had erected around his life. As he lay in bed beside Jessica, the morning light revealing the stark reality of his betrayal, a wave of guilt washed over him. He had crossed the line he had sworn he never would. The guilt gnawed at him, a dull ache in the pit of his stomach. He avoided Emily's calls that morning, ashamed of what he had done. He convinced himself it was a one-time mistake, a moment of weakness that meant nothing. He was still Michael, the devoted husband and father. But as the trip continued, so did his encounters with Jessica. They were both caught in a seductive tide, rationalizing their actions, telling themselves that it was just temporary, that it didn't change the way they felt about their families. Back home, Emily felt a disquieting unease growing within her. She trusted Michael, she always had, but his calls had become shorter, more rushed. The warmth in his voice had been replaced by something distant, something she couldn't quite place. He seemed present, but only partially so, his mind elsewhere, preoccupied by some unspoken weight. She tried to shake off her anxieties, attributing his distance to the stress of the negotiations. She tried to keep their routine as normal as possible, filling the house with laughter and love for the children. But an intuition, that nagging whisper in the back of her mind, kept telling her that something was wrong, that the man she knew, the man she loved, had somehow drifted away from her. One evening, as she was paying their bills online, she stumbled upon a charge on their shared credit card from an expensive, high-end restaurant she knew wasn't part of his usual business routine. The restaurant was a place she knew he would never choose for a business meal. The seed of doubt that had been planted in her mind sprouted into a full bloom of suspicion. Her heart pounded in her chest, and her breath caught in her throat. She felt a chilling sense of dread, a premonition that something terrible had happened. She sat in their bedroom, the weight of uncertainty pressing down on her chest. She gazed at their wedding photo on the nightstand, the happy smiles mocking the current situation. Memories of their life together flashed before her. Lazy Sunday mornings, whispered "I love yous" before bed, the laughter of their children filling their home, the comfort of his strong arms around her at night. Was it all a lie? Had he ever truly loved her? The thought was a sharp, agonizing stab to her heart. Driven by a desperate need for the truth, she called Michael's assistant, feigning a casual inquiry about his schedule. The hesitant response, the awkward pauses, the evasive answers confirmed her worst fears. She felt a numbing coldness spread through her body, a sense of betrayal so profound it left her feeling like she had been punched in the gut. She knew, without a doubt, that Michael was not who she thought he was. The moment Michael returned home, Emily confronted him. The cool, collected woman he'd known was replaced by a force of nature, her eyes filled with a mixture of sorrow and anger. He initially tried to deny it, to dismiss her claims as the product of an overactive imagination, but the look in her eyes, the pain and disappointment etched on her face, broke him. He couldn't look at her, couldn't stand to see the anguish he had caused. He confessed everything, the words tumbling out of him in a jumbled mess of guilt and shame. Emily was devastated. The betrayal was a deep, gaping wound in her heart, shattering the foundation of their marriage. It was like looking at herself in a mirror and seeing it splinter into a million pieces. She couldn't look at Michael without feeling a mix of love, anger, and heartbreak. Her chest ached with the weight of her sorrow, and her throat was tight with unspoken words. The silence between them was deafening, thick with unspoken accusations and painful truths. She considered leaving, packing her bags, and taking her children away from the man she no longer recognized. But their years together, the memories they shared, the love that still lingered, albeit tarnished, held her back. She looked at their children, their innocent faces, and a wave of protectiveness washed over her. Michael, drowning in guilt and self-loathing, was ready to accept whatever punishment Emily chose. He hated himself for what he had done, for the pain he had inflicted on the woman he had sworn to cherish. He offered to leave, to vanish from her life if that was what she wanted, his voice thick with emotion. But Emily wasn't sure what she wanted. She needed time, space, to try to process what had happened, to try to comprehend the enormity of his betrayal. Nights became silent battles, each of them lying in bed, worlds apart, lost in their own thoughts. Emily cried herself to sleep, her body racked with sobs, while Michael lay awake, haunted by the memories of his mistake, the face of Jessica fading, replaced by the broken expression of the woman he loved. The air between them was thick with unspoken words, with a longing to go back to the way things were, but knowing they never could. Michael refused to let his mistake define their marriage. He knew that he had shattered Emily's trust, but he was not ready to give up on their love. He cut all ties with Jessica, blocked her number, and deleted every trace of her from his life. He also made the decision to switch jobs, stepping away from the company that had provided the context for his lapse in judgment. More importantly, he started therapy, both individually and with Emily. He poured his heart out to a counselor, trying to understand the motivations behind his actions, exploring the darkness within himself that had led him down such a self-destructive path. He dedicated himself to proving to Emily that he was still the man she married, the man she had fallen in love with. He knew it would take time, patience, and a lot of work, but he was prepared to do whatever it took. Emily, meanwhile, struggled with a maelstrom of conflicting emotions. Forgiveness seemed impossible, a concept beyond her grasp. Yet, she also couldn't ignore Michael's genuine remorse, the pain in his eyes, the way he now looked at her, as if she were something precious that he had almost lost. With the help of counseling, she slowly allowed herself to heal. They attended couples therapy, where they confronted their pain, their fears, and their hopes for the future. It wasn't easy. There were fights, tears, and moments when Emily wanted to walk away, to give up completely. But Michael's unwavering effort, his consistent presence, and her deep, underlying love for him kept her from giving up completely. She learned to express her anger without shutting him out, to communicate her hurt instead of building walls of resentment. He learned to listen without being defensive, to acknowledge the depth of her pain, and to accept responsibility for his actions. They were relearning how to be together, one painful step at a time. It was like trying to piece together a shattered vase, each attempt to rebuild the relationship taking more effort than the last. But they persisted, their shared history and the love that still flickered between them providing the motivation to continue. Months passed, and the wounds began to heal, albeit slowly and unevenly. The initial shock and pain began to subside, replaced by a new sense of understanding and a renewed commitment to rebuilding. Michael became more present, more involved in their family life. He prioritized Emily, not just with words, but with actions, small gestures that reminded her of the man she had fallen in love with. He started making her breakfast, leaving love notes on her pillow, and taking her on dates as if they were courting again. He spent more time with the children, playing games and reading stories, making sure that they felt loved and secure. He was determined to be a better husband, a better father, and a better man. Emily, in turn, allowed herself to trust again, slowly, cautiously, like a bird learning to fly after being injured. It wasn't about forgetting, it was about choosing to rebuild, about accepting that life, like relationships, is full of imperfections and unforeseen challenges. Trust, once broken, couldn't be magically restored. She had learned that painful lesson. It had to be earned, day by day, through consistent effort and unwavering honesty. Michael was willing to do the work. One evening, as they sat watching their children play in the garden, Emily reached for Michael's hand. The contact was tentative, almost shy, but the gesture spoke volumes. It was the first time she had initiated physical contact since discovering the affair. Tears welled in his eyes, tears of relief and gratitude. It was a small gesture, but it meant everything. Their journey wasn't over. The scars from the past still visible beneath the surface of their renewed relationship. They both knew that there would be challenges ahead, that trust was a delicate thing, easily broken. But they were walking it together, and that, for the time being, was enough. They had learned that love was not just about grand gestures or effortless devotion. It was about choosing to love, even after the heart had been broken. It was about facing the challenges together, about supporting one another, and about never losing faith in the power of second chances. They were starting again, with more wisdom, more understanding, and a deeper appreciation for the love that had once almost been lost. They had come through the fire and, though the path ahead would be difficult, they were ready to face it together, hand in hand.